Welcome to Woodshop 101. This is episode 122 for April 9th, 2018. On today's show, we are going to talk about finishing techniques. I'm Sam Waddell of Samurai Designs, and I'm joined today by my co-host Jeremy Crawford from the Countryside Workshop, Drew Short of Rockin' H Woodshop, and our guest host Juan from D Medetta ATX on Instagram. Hey guys.
Hey. What's going on?
Hey.
So we're gonna just
H Woodshop.
You know what? I made it through without making any mistakes, and I'm just gonna keep on rolling because we want to thank our patrons: Michael Brindle, Devin Richter, Sean McHenry, Carl Mose, Neil Sims, Eric, Rhoten, and Bryan, Collette. Thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it. If you would like to be a supporter of the show, you can head over to woodshop101podcast.com/listen. Find the show notes for today's episode, and there will be links for small one-time donations and reoccurring donations. If you want to become a patron to our Patreon campaign, then head over to patreon.com/woodshop101. You can buy a Woodshop 101 podcast t-shirt, hoodie, rev marker pack. Head over to countrysideworkshop.com/shop for that link. Definitely go check them out.
Man, she's getting pro now.
Right? Uh-huh.
I know.
Finally.
Look at that. No mess ups. It was awesome.
You actually said that like you weren't reading it word for word.
I know. I kind of like ad-libbed, right? That's what it's called.
Ad-lib?
Yeah. Right?
So close.
So close.
Ab-lib?
Close.
What's it called?
Ad-lib.
Oh,
Yeah.
ad-lib. I did it.
You know, us models and actors know how that, I know what to say there.
I know, because I just had to make a cue card for a video I had.
I know. I could tell. No, well, I know you.
Yeah,
So whenever you're behind the camera, you kind of get a little brain locked here and there. So
I know. And I was
you
like,
got all that in one take, and I was like, she had to have been reading.
So
yep.
There's no long pause.
you said cue cards, and I'm going to post something to Instagram sometime soon. Sam's actual very first appearance on the podcast was not when she was a guest host. I don't even think she remembers this. 2 Christmases ago, you were in our Christmas episode. You sent a video in to our Christmas episode.
Yeah, just to say Merry Christmas.
Yes, and you had a whole bunch of cue cards in front of you. Yes.
No way.
Yes, you did.
Are you sure it's the right Sam?
I'm 100% positive. I am going to find this, and we will show it at the end of this episode.
When?
2 Christmases ago. You have to go on with the show. I
was about to say,
it.
Sam, you're doing the show.
I know. Okay. Well, I'm do not remember that at all. I hardly was on Instagram 2 years ago. But we're going to talk about finishing techniques tonight. So who would like to start with how they like to do their finishing techniques? Let's start with Jay, since you're the guest host.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Yeah, no spot there.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Yeah, I don't really know, and it's hard for me to describe. That's part of my my maturation, I believe, as a woodworker, is learning some of the technical jargon. Sam and I will talk sometimes, and it's like we talked about earlier. Sometimes we get lost in the translation. Yeah, that was a monster bite.
No, wasn't it?
It's like Jaws. Like both Drew and I were like, damn, damn.
You're gonna make her choke.
Sorry.
All right, we're gonna pause from finishing techniques for 1 second. Are you ready?
Did you find it?
Yes, I did.
No way.
Yes, I did.
Hey guys, my name is Sam, and I'm the owner of Samurai Designs. We are located in Northern Virginia, right outside of DC. We offer custom.
Oh my God! Yes, you guys asked me, right?
I want to wish you all a very happy holiday and enjoy your time with your family and friends. You guys can find me on Etsy. My shop
Oh my
is
god, I totally forgot about
Sam
that.
Bryan Designs. There we have an assortment of home decor items. Or you guys can follow me on Instagram. My handle is
I wrote them down, so then I get
there
more
you can see
followers.
what I'm doing in the shop and all my latest
Okay.
builds. Have a happy holiday and a great new year. Bye, guys. Hi,
Look at these things.
Do you remember that?
We wanted a Merry
No.
Christmas, not an advertisement.
Oh no, everyone.
Like a free plug.
Everybody else was like, "This is so and so from so and so. Merry Christmas!" And like Sam's is like a minute and a half long.
Oh,
Sam's
wait,
like, I got an
not.
infomercial. I'm gonna take it right here.
Well,
This is
if anyone knows me, if I'm put on the spot, I can do it. But if I like have to crunch it in like a small time, which normally I leave myself only like 10 minutes to do it, then I need cue cards because I like cannot think it through. So
You can find me on Etsy with a bunch of home decor items for not $19.99, not $15.99.
order today.
that's why you guys love me. That's
So-
why you guys love me.
Cut shoes with this knife. For
I
only
didn't even remember
$9.99.
that you were on the show, and I don't remember what's like made me remember that, and I was like, wait a second, she was on the show well before she was a guest host.
Your favorite guest host that
So-
turned in.
Here, you're almost to the day. You are 1 year
That's so exciting.
as well. That's March 27th, 2017 is when you were our first, or when you were on as a true guest host.
I know, and we were getting 40 likes, 30 likes, and then we post that, and there's 400 likes, and
That's how it works.
all we got to do is throw a flashy woman up there on the screen.
Drew, I told you, and Sam told you too. If
That's
you would just wear
eating an
Daisy
ice cream.
Dukes,
I
you
know. I
would-
told you.
Yeah.
I told you. I would love, seriously, we've been talking about this for a year, that if you would wear your Daisy Duke cut off short. Jay wears them.
I
Where
think
am I-
I would get a lot more unfollowers if I did that.
Mm-mm.
I wear my jorts and my likes go up and my engagement goes up.
Mhm.
And they're
With,
not even
like,
that short.
40-year-old dudes, 50-year-old
Hey,
dudes.
you know what? It's just a number,
It's,
okay?
it's engagement. It's engagement. That's the important
It's all
thing.
about the numbers. That's all Instagram cares about.
So
Numbers.
You
don't
like
care.
shorts? Vote yes or no.
yeah. So back to back to those finishing techniques. Now that we got sidetracked here with
Well, we
Sam's
have a topic.
debut.
I didn't know we had a topic.
It was the best debut ever.
Yeah. So Drew, I know you kind of mentioned something through text to us about having some complication issues with the humidity. What?
Oh yeah.
So what exactly? Let's see if we can diagnose or give you a solution for this. What exactly is the issue that you're having?
Well, I already have the solution, but let's see if you can get it right.
Don't use lacquer. Got it right.
No, dude. This kind of lacquer is good stuff. But no, I started using a pre-cat lacquer from Sherwin-Williams called Sherwood High Build, and even for paint, I have it tinted to the color that it needs to be, and it's an all-in-one spray. But because I was spraying out after it just rained, it was currently raining, and the temperature was about 55, almost not quite 60 degrees, and the wind was up. As I was spraying, because lacquer dries so fast, it's got a chemical reaction that just kind of cures and cools rather really, really fast. So I can put a coat down and have it ready to sand in under 10 to 15 minutes. And the thing was, because the humidity was so high in the air, as the lacquer cured on top, it was trapping moisture underneath that layer, and
So you're getting
as
a blushing effect.
I was getting blushing, so it looked like milky white paint underneath the lacquer.
Yeah.
And I was trying to figure out how to combat it with what I had, and I didn't have anything on hand. I thought maybe I'll just, I'll spray another coat of lacquer. It'll soften that up and, let some of that moisture out of there. And no, it just cured even faster, trapped even more moisture underneath it. So I had to do a lot of online looking to figure out what I needed to do. And I actually found two options. One is a little bit more risky than the other. But the riskier one is what I went with because that's all I had at the time without having to drive to Sherwin-Williams and get what I needed. So judging from my dilemma, what do you guys think that should have been done to cure the moisture problem?
If I remember right, I think there's a product on the market that that will extend the cure time of the lacquer. I'm not entirely sure on that, but I also know if you spray lacquer thinner on it, it should keep the top from curing as fast.
Okay, there is a product, and it is called Retarder.
Yes, there you go.
And you actually have to buy it in the same manufacturer as the lacquer to have the best results. I'm not sure it may just be a recommendation, but they say that if you buy it from the same manufacturer that makes the product that you used, it works the best. You can spray Retarder straight onto your finish if you did not priorly mix it in your finish before spraying. And it will actually soften the lacquer back up because it doesn't get as hot as actual straight thinner does. And I actually did the more risky version, which was spraying straight out thinner right on top of the lacquer. The riskier part is that if you spray too much or too heavy, it will actually melt the lacquer and start running and just ruin your finish altogether, and you would have to sand it and redo it all over. And I didn't want to recoat. That was my deal, is I didn't want to put another coat of lacquer on. So in order to repair certain damaged parts of your finish, you can take lacquer thinner on a rag or paper towel and wipe it off. And I got that tip from Todd Clippinger over at American Craftsman Workshop.
Not this
and you
Todd.
Can wipe.
Not this Todd.
The real
not
Todd.
This Todd.
But you can just swipe over the area to cure like maybe a drip of lacquer that just kind of globbed in there, or something was in the air that landed on your lacquer and you need to fix that. But you can swipe at it and then coat it again, and then it will soften the lacquer back up and settle everything back down to a flat finish. But I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to put another coat down. So putting thinner right on top of the lacquer in a really fine layer actually did the job. And it made the lacquer soften, and the moisture just evaporated out, and the milky white look just went away.
How do you spell that?
Lacquer?
No.
Milky, M-I-L.
No. I was writing this all down.
Retarder?
Yeah.
Retarder?
Is it probably how you think you spell it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
With an ER at the end. Yeah.
Okay.
That's an aggressive name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would have gone with something different.
So if you're getting a similar issue with paint, they have a product out there similar to Retarder called Floetrol, I think is how it's pronounced. And it simply does the same thing. It extends the drying time of latex paint. So,
and there's I don't know if it works the same way, but when it comes to thinning out your lacquer, normally you do like a 1-to-4 ratio, thinner to lacquer. But if you're using Retarder, then you want to back that ratio off a little bit. So if you're doing like a 20% ratio of thinner to lacquer, you want to back it down to say 5% Retarder and 10% of your lacquer thinner, because it's going to make it super, super thin, and drying time is going to take forever if you use the normal percentage that you've been using.
Mm-hmm. So do you prefer spraying your finish?
Me?
Yes.
Yes. I prefer spraying because I can get an entire coat down in under, say 5 minutes, maybe 10, depending on the surface area that I'm covering, versus a paintbrush that, might take me an hour or two. And once I'm completely over the area that I'm spraying, it's ready to sand in the area that I started from. And I find that it gives me even coverage more than a paintbrush would, and there's no strokes, no brush streaks.
So your go-to finish then would be spraying lacquer or spraying water-based poly?
I don't like poly because it's very plasticky looking. Yeah, you can get probably satin and stuff like that, but it's very difficult to fix. Let's just say if you had a problem, somebody had a polyurethane finish and it needs fixed, it's so much harder to fix polyurethane than it is lacquer or shellac. Because poly, you pretty much have to sand down to fix the problem.
Yeah.
Lacquer, you can just take thinner and go over the area, fix your issue, and then recoat.
My grandpa always talks about that, how, like, if our client, like, the difference between, and I've done shellac on, like, some things and lacquer on some things, but mainly I do poly. And that's a good way to look at it because, like, if you do mess up and you need to fix it, or something like your client's piece down the line, needs to be fixed, it's going to be a lot harder to get off the poly than it is for, like, fix that section.
I've been a poly guy too, but like I mentioned, like wanting to get into bigger builds and more maybe difficult builds, I think I might look into the shellac and the lacquer just for like longevity of the pieces, so they maybe hold up longer because that poly doesn't like change over time, like with kids and stuff like that.
Well, you kind of look at it. There's downsides to every finish. Poly eventually starts yellowing.
Yeah.
Lacquer will eventually start cracking. And shellac doesn't really offer a whole lot of protection because it doesn't really build up on itself.
And, like, if you were to spill water on it, wouldn't it, like, kind of, it's not the best for, like, tabletops, wouldn't you say?
For shellac?
Mm-hmm.
I've been told that it's not the best for durability. It's good for, popping the grain on wood really, really nice. But if you're looking for durability as far as things being scooted across it or set on it, and it's probably not the best choice.
That's what I would probably be more concerned with, with finishes is durability, and obviously it depends on the piece, but I feel like we do a lot of stuff for families, people with kids. I would want the piece to last and look like it, does when I first drop it off to 5 to 7 to 10 years later. It's still there. And like I said, I'm a poly guy. I know they're coming out with, different polys that won't stain and won't yellow, as quickly. I don't know. For me, I think right now what I'm doing, I probably stick with poly just because that's what I know, what I'm comfortable with. Mm-hmm. I would have to do a lot of research and reach out to the experts to really get some good answers and some advice on, the lacquers and the shellacs.
I would say
learning right now.
A good starting point if you want to test out lacquers and shellacs is get lacquer in a can from Deft or Watco. And just the little rattle cans, $5-6, and so that's how I got started into lacquer, was using the rattle cans, and I still use rattle cans on smaller projects. And they make a shellac in a can too. I don't know. I think I've seen it at Home Depot. I'm not entirely sure. But
yes, shellac. Yes, they do, and you want to make sure that it doesn't have the wax in it. Yeah.
Well, I don't think the one in the rattle can has wax, period, because it would clog up the tip.
No, not the rattle can. It's just like a can.
Yeah, you're talking about a quart. Yeah, they sell it in a quart. But I know they make shellac in a rattle can, too. So if you wanted to get into, like, trying to spray it. So, poly...
See, and that's what I'm excited about, too. I just got a sprayer from Humorous, and I've never used one, so I'm super excited to really work with that and see how that... Like Drew said, like it enhances your time in the shop. It makes everything so much easier and smoother. I'm excited to like get my next project with, where I can use my sprayer and really see how effective it is.
I have done a lot of experimenting with the lacquer because like Jeremy did. I started out with the nitrocellulose lacquers that are in the rattle cans, and they offer a really good intro into using lacquer. But I will say that going from that nitrocellulose to that pre-cat type lacquers that you get from Sherwin-Williams, the performance value of those lacquers are so much different. It is almost night and day how easy the Sherwin-Williams stuff that I've been using goes on. Granted, I did have a blushing problem, but that's going to happen with just about any kind of lacquer if you have high humidity in the air. But those rattle cans versus, the professional version type stuff that you can buy are so different.
So, because I've only tested with it for I think 2 or 3 projects, and it's been projects that the table that I had a different color on the top and a different color on the bottom, the two-tone. We sprayed the M-Tech lacquer on that, which I really like that line. But that was my first time using it, and I don't know too much about it. But then we also used their water-based pigmented lacquer paint, which self-flashes and self-levels, which is awesome. And then using this, and this is the M-Tech product, and you can roll it and brush it, and it also will you can spray it, but it also, you can roll and brush, and you don't see any marks, any streaks, any that little rolling mark.
That's what you used on that blue console, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
well, actually, no. I tried a different product for that. I tried the Benjamin Moore Advance, which was really cool. And the people at Benjamin Moore told me that you needed to wait 24 hours in between each coat. And I had a couple contractors that were no, you don't. You need to, it's 4 hours and you're fine. But when I was the other day for the big white oak table, one of my clients was interested in a Rubio color. So I went to this one flooring place down over here, and I asked them about the Rubio and the finish and all of that, and we had a good talk. But he did say Sherwin-Williams has some of the best lacquers, but then there's this new thing that just came out, and I can't remember the name, but it's super hard something, if that rings a bell, and it's supposed to you can use it over anything, even supposedly the Rubio, which I don't know if it's advertised, but that you could do that. Because I know you're not supposed to put anything over it. But it's called super hard. I'll get the name for you, but supposedly it's the best finish. And it holds up super good.
I was hoping someone would be hard.
I was hoping that someone would be oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. But no.
I was trying to think of has she, because I
told you this. Literally told you this, but you forget everything I tell you. Just kidding.
Well, there's a lot of conversations.
Yeah. So, would you put lacquer on a tabletop? Is it?
I would.
So, and here's my problem with putting poly on a tabletop is if you put any, especially on a table like a dining tabletop. God, I can't speak. Is poly, if you put something hot on it, hazes, and the haze is there. You have to sand it out and reapply poly to get that haze gone. And so I don't necessarily like that for a tabletop, because at some point you're going to want to put, a hot plate on there, and it doesn't take a lot of heat to do that. We had a table a couple years back, and Kendra baked some bread, and she put the bread down on a towel, and the towel was laying on the tabletop. And when she picked it up, you had perfect little loaf of bread marks across the table where they had been sitting on the towel. And that was all based off of poly and causing it to haze. So that had to be sanded down and reapplied. Does lacquer do the same thing?
To be honest, I haven't tested heat tolerance of lacquer. And I would say that if it did, then fixing it would be a lot smoother and a lot quicker.
You got to think that it does, just because of the the interaction with the heat, that there would have to be some kind of reaction. Now the severity depends, I guess, but yeah, there has to be some sort of reaction.
So I have a question for you, because we always, when I first started, we always used the polyurethane in the the Minwax black and orange or black and gold. Mm-hmm. But then now we've gone over to, and that was the oil based, and now we've gone over to the water based polyacrylic. Is there a difference other than water and oil based?
No.
Because this is what, like, the polyacrylic is kind of like that stuff that I was using. So why did they name it two different things?
Is there something about drying time that...
Well, I know the polyacrylic dries a lot faster than the polyurethane.
Well,
and I don't like using so the polyacrylic is also clear, and then the polyurethane is
But
like
that's the
yellow.
same with any water-based and oil-based. Oil-based
right.
always has that tint. And
So what's the difference? Why are they
I don't know if
two
that's
different
just
things?
how they named it. That's just because General Finish just does the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
General Finish just calls that their Armor Seal, which is their oil-based, and they call
High performance.
high performance. They also have Flat Out Flat, which is a water-based. And then they have their hybrid, which is the Endurovar, which is water-based, but gives you the amber color. So I don't know if there's a specific reason why it's polyacrylic, more than it just being a marketing thing that they in a product name. But I could be wrong. And to be truthful, I don't use a lot of Minwax product anymore. Ever since I went to General Finishes, I primarily stick to General Finishes product.
Yeah,
Unless I do a lacquer. So
I just got a General Finishes. I'm gonna start probably just using them for now on too.
yeah, I mean, to me their product is a little bit better. It's more expensive. I don't think you have to apply as many coats either. So
yeah, the stain. I've only used their stain and then their salad bowl finish before.
yeah.
I will say to people that tend to stain their projects before their actual top coat, they tend to rush that. I know I did, and not allowing their stain to fully off gas before putting on a clear coat that would basically seal it in there. Rushing your finish can cause a lot of problems with your no matter what your top coat is.
Would you send that to my client?
How long do you usually wait after you apply a stain? What's your go-to?
I let it sit until the next day.
24 hours is usually what I do.
Yeah. That's what I say. I say 24 hours, but it's the next day when I can get in the shop. Some point that next day is when I do. But I try to let it sit a good 12 to 16 hours at least.
Yeah. Same.
I had issues with that bookshelf because I think it was like colder than kind of expected in Austin, like the weekend that I did all my staining. So I had to wait like a full day for it to dry out there just because of the temperatures like being so dramatic of a difference here, which was annoying, but better to wait than to rush it.
Yeah. True.
Sometimes I know a lot of people already know this, but if you rush your finish, it can also lift your stain, and then it doesn't look as good. So definitely let it really cure before you start your finish.
Yeah. So that's interesting. I want to hear what all you listeners prefer to do, what your preferred finish is, and if you prefer to brush, wipe, or spray it on. So,
and if Todd Clippinger is listening, maybe he could do a little clearing up of the polyurethane and polyacrylic, because I'm sure he's probably dealt with it too.
Yeah. That would be awesome.
So,
nice. Well, here we'll just say what grit do you sand to? Let's go around.
220.
That's one more funny finishing thing. 220. I do 220. Well, sometimes 180.
220.
But 220.
I only go to about 180. I don't feel like I need to go any higher than that.
Yeah, me neither, and it takes forever.
Or a worn out
150.
120. A really worn out 120. I can do that too.
I think it really, to determine the end goal, we got to start at the beginning. So Sam, where do you start on a typical project? Walk us through the grit on your typical project.
So we start sometimes we start at 60, but mainly we start at 80. Then we go from 80 to 120, 150, 180, and then I normally stop.
Okay.
No, I do 100 in between there. 80, 100, 120, 150, and sometimes 180. I very rarely go to 220. Very rare. And sometimes I don't even go to 180. Sometimes I just stop at 150 because it's super smooth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What about
I think
you?
it depends on the wood, too, that you're sanding.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If it's really porous wood, you might need to go something a little bit higher.
All right, what's your typical go-to grits? Drew?
I start out at 80, and then I do 120, and then 220 depending on the wood. I only have like 2 or 3 steps.
Do you skip 100?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what about you, Jay?
I'm the same, 80, 120, and I'll go to 180. And sometimes if I'm feeling, froggy, I'll hit 220. I'll bust out the Gator sponges and just do some hand stuff. But that's about it. I don't go any higher. I don't hit every level, I always feel like it's enough. But I'll start with 80. And then again, it depends on the lumber. If I've got to really break it down, to 60 or really go up to, I think 220 is the highest I'll go.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty the same. I start out at 80 and I jump straight to 120, and then I jump from 120 straight to 220. Very rarely do I hit 150 or 180 in between that.
Yeah.
And yes, they say don't jump grits and all that, but I've really never had a problem with it. If I'm doing stain, I will go to 320 on ingrain, and that's just so I can get the ingrain a little bit tighter, so the stain will match.
Soak up like a sponge.
Yeah, so the stain will match a little bit better, but that's only on ingrain pieces.
So also another 2 little tips. Make sure that when, I know a lot of people probably already know this, but make sure when you're sanding, make sure you sand off the grit that you just did before you start your new grit. But one thing that my grandpa just taught me, that if you wanted to take some shellac and put it on your end grain, and let that soak up, then your stain won't soak in as much. So.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it. I have to try that.
So
that's
a little Gramp tip.
I think essentially it could probably be done with other things besides shellac. Shellac just dries so fast. Mm-hmm. But if you let that ingrain soak up maybe a little bit of even like a polyacrylic or something, some kind of water base, and then sand off that top portion, that it may work as well. I'm not entirely sure. So,
I go with Grant.
Yeah.
We were thinking of doing a video on it, so we'll let you know when it comes out. So, anyone want to add anything else to their finishing techniques?
What do you guys prefer to use for sanding your finishes between coats?
Like 360?
360. I'd go with 320.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what I've got.
I do 320 or 400.
Yeah, we
have
got 350.
I think we have
350, 400 maybe.
To be honest, I go with what I have on hand. It's either 320 or 400.
One of them are rolled up next to the piece. Yeah. They're folded up.
I have both, but it's usually what I have on hand.
Trying to think of what's in my sanding box over there.
I will say that between my first and second coat, I will use the 320 sanding sponges because they get into those corners really, really good. But after my second and third coats, I like using 4/0 steel wool.
Yeah.
And but you got to make sure that you blow all that crap off before you go to recoat.
That stuff is insane, and it gets everywhere, I feel like. And if your client doesn't like the finish that you gave them, you can dull it with steel wool as well.
Mhm.
Like if they're like, oh, it's too glossy, you can dull it with the steel wool.
I prefer to use, if they don't specify a sheen, I will typically go to use satin, because anything that's higher than satin tends to show a lot of imperfections.
Yeah. I very rarely go above that ever. It's mainly matte, as everyone wants right now.
I've got a paint job I've got to do. I got to do a paint job on these floating shells, and he's wanting a black lacquer, and black shows everything. So I've got to be real careful with how these look.
I've got to do a nightstand for everybody in black, and I'm like, oh, can we just do something else?
I told him, I said, you're getting satin. So, I'm not going gloss. He's like, that's fine.
So
Yeah.
well, that was a good topic. That's full of
Good
some
job,
good information.
Yes.
So
I would like to remind you, if you listen to the show on iTunes, to please give us a 5-star rating. It helps us reach a greater audience. So thanks, guys, for listening, and make sure you give us 5 stars.
5 stars, not 4 3/4, 5.
5.
Always 5. So, Jay, hit us with your contact. Let's wrap this up.
Jay Dimadetta at ATX on Instagram, Facebook. You can find me on YouTube. Emails, dimadettaatx@gmail.com. But Instagram is the best. Shoot me a DM, hit me with a comment. I'm always there. Always happy to reply.
Awesome. And if you want to get in contact with Jeremy, Sam, or myself, you can reach us through our respective websites, samryandesigns.com, countrysideworkshop.com, and rhwoodshop.com. Go to the contact section, find where you can send us an email, give us some feedback, questions, comments, concerns, what have you. And if you want to reach the Woodshop 101 podcast crew all at once, you can send us an email at kickback@woodshop101podcast.com. Call us by voicemail if you want to hear your voice on air, and that's 409-234-3959. You can also do a voice memo app through your cell phone and send it straight to the email that I just mentioned. We love all of the feedback that you guys send us. It helps us figure out what kind of topics to bring into the show for the next few weeks upcoming. We've really got some great guests lined up, just like Jay here, and we appreciate having him on the show.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Jay.
Thanks for coming on.
He's like just sitting there. He's like,
like,
I had a
should I
great
say
time.
thanks?
he's
I was
like,
on.
can I get off of here yet? These dudes are weird.
Yeah.
Really weird.
It's not even gonna say
That
thanks.
Todd
What happened to me?
and Derek
Derek.
guy.
I'm out of tea.
Yeah, I'm almost out of tea, guys. No, I had a blast, man. It's great.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on.
We appreciate
Absolutely. Anytime.
Not to Sam's help, because every time we threw your name out, she was like, yeah.
Yeah.
And she told me, she's like, it's on the fence. We're breaking it down.
Well, we really appreciate having you on. It's been a great show. Lots of good information on this episode. So basically from Jeremy, Sam, myself, and our special guest, Jay, we want to wish you guys well. Please be safe in your shops, and we will talk to you on the next podcast episode. So 1, 2, 3, boom!
Boom.